Right.
All right. Hello and welcome to Design Chat, the best design discussion on the internet. Tonight we have the very cool pleasure of talking to Emily Pilloton. Am I saying that right, Emily?
It's Pilloton, but yours is good too. Yep.
Pilloton. I want to make sure I get that right. Pilloton. And she is the founder and executive director at Project H Design. I had the pleasure of hearing her speak in September at the CUSP conference. She is yet another CUSP conference representative here at DesignChat that the good people at Samana Mason put on back in September, and was enthralled basically by her story and why she does what she does. So Emily, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to be a hold up here, but I think your sound is cutting out.
Sound's cutting out? Are you having a hard time?
I can't hear you at all.
No? Check, check.
Other
1, 2, 3.
people not hear him? I'm sorry, maybe it's just me. I could hear you for a second and then you were gone.
Are your headphones still plugged in?
Oh.
Check,
Oh, no.
check. 1, 2, 3. Ben Parr can hear me. You can't. Carson can hear me. You can't. I'm going to sing badly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was fine until like 10 seconds ago.
Well, we can go ahead and refresh.
Can you hear me, Ryan?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I can hear you good. Here, I'm going to resort to typing.
Hold on.
Why don't you refresh your... Start again. It's okay. It gives me more time. Here, I gotta tell her. Gives more time to drink.
Okay, 1 sec. Don't go anywhere.
Not going anywhere. Great. She comes back. I'm gone. What the? Hello? Is anybody there? Sorry, everybody. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty. This is awkward now. Yes. Cricket. Emily had a little audio problem. She's refreshing her browser, and she will be right back with us. So
okay, I can hear you.
Oh, there she is. Hello.
Yeah, that was, as soon as you started talking, you were gone. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries.
Okay, I'm here.
If it happens again, just wait a couple seconds and just refresh your browser, and then usually that fixes it. So. Okay. So should I do the whole thing again, everybody? What do you think in the room? No? Yes? No? Probably not. Let's just everybody welcome. Golf clap, everybody. Welcome, Emily Pilloton. Emily Pilloton. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you.
So in the brief introduction, I'm not sure how much of it you were hearing. I was just kind of saying how much I enjoyed hearing you speak at the CUSP conference in September, and hearing your story about, how you were working, and then, you had this sort of change of heart and decided you wanted to do something different and important with your life. You wanted to help people with design, and you started Project H Design. And it's very commendable, and I'm completely enthralled by your story. And I wanted to bring you here to share that story with even more people who are, passionate about design and passionate about what they do.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll just sort of retell it.
Yeah.
And, I feel like a lot of other designers are starting to feel this way as well, where I got into design, specifically architecture first, and then I ended up in product design. But I got into it originally because I viewed it as a great way to solve problems in a creative and hopefully beautiful way, and went through 6 years of design school. I did my undergrad in architecture at UC Berkeley, and then I got a graduate degree in product design at the School of Art Institute of Chicago, and graduated with about 80 grand in debt and had to get a job, and went into the sort of usual design capacity entry-level jobs. I was working for architecture firms and product design firms. My sort of aha moment came when I was working for a big retail clothing company, one of the biggest, and I'd been there for about 3 weeks, not even a month, I think. and was sitting in this meeting, which had gone on for, God, at least 2 hours, if not closing in on 3. And our discussion over the course of those 2 hours had centered around the selection of doorknobs, like which doorknobs we should choose for the following year's store renovations. And keep in mind, my business card, my job title was store architect. So store architect, I was supposed to be in charge of all the design decisions for the stores, and yet this is what my problem-solving decisions had come down to, was doorknobs. So this was kind of my what the heck has happened moment, where I just realized how misguided design had become and how far I had gotten so far away from why I originally got into design, which was not just to solve problems, but to solve problems that I thought were worth solving, and doorknobs did not fall in that category. So I quit the next day, and that was the last real job I have ever had, and also the last time I had health insurance. So, yeah.
And then you ventured out into the wild blue yonder and decided that you needed to do something to help people with design. And where in the timeline, because I know you've written a book also that we want to talk about, which is leading to another exciting project that we'll touch on later. Did Project H start before the book? Where in your sort of thought process did that all happen?
So, so I left the big clothing company, and that was something of an epiphany, but I also didn't really know quite what to do or how to go about it. I think a lot of times people have a moment where they realize something is wrong, but then it's a whole different battle to figure out what the right route is. So for me, that played out in a couple different ways. The first thing is that I started writing a lot. I started doing some freelance writing for different magazines, for Good Magazine and Ready Made and some of the bigger design magazines, and then ultimately became the managing editor of a blog called Inhabitat, which is a phenomenal green design blog. And I came into that when the blog was about 2 years old, and I was the editor for 2 years, and over that time the site traffic grew by a factor of like 15. But also during that time, that was where I really started to have more of a critical voice. So in becoming more involved in design writing, I was able to take a more critical look at the design world in general, and at Inhabitat specifically, I became critical of sustainability and how most sustainable design is very centered on environmental responsibility, and the sort of social impact and social responsibility discussions tend to fall second in line, if at all, if they're even part of the discussion at all. So Project H was a direct result of that kind of critical discussion that I started at Inhabitat. So wanting to provide a more sort of social impact-driven approach to both sustainable design and design in general. So Project H was launched in January 2008 with no business plan. I was living with my parents at the time and had like $1,000 in my bank account, and really it just was something that I felt like I needed to do, if only to push myself to figure out what to do with it. I've had this moment where I was standing in the Secretary of State's office ready to file my articles of incorporation, and I was holding them and looking at the woman who had just called my name and thinking, like, it felt like I was about to get married. Like, the minute I handed her those documents, I had to figure out how the heck to make this organization work. So it was kind of a personal challenge, but that was the moment when I had realized that criticism only got so far, and that Project H was going to be the action part of my own personal journey, and also hopefully open up some avenues for other designers.
So a couple of notes to the people who are here. If you haven't been here before, we're going to do about 45 minutes of talk, sort of back and forth, and during that time, definitely serve up some, if you have questions for Emily, put those in the chat room. And during the chat, we'll sort of harvest those questions, and we'll ask those of Emily at the end and give you credit for them, of course. One other thing is that tonight we've done something a little bit new. In the past, I've shown artwork behind me on this screen, and sometimes it's kind of hard to see what's going on the screen behind me because of light difference and that sort of thing. So tonight we've made a PDF that you guys can download, and the link to that PDF is going to show up in just 1 second. You got that one? Okay. So go ahead and put that one up there, and you can download that link, and it's the same PDF as what's sitting right behind me right now. So we'll give you guys a couple seconds to download that, and then we'll keep on going with the discussion. A couple other notes are that because of the holidays, the next 2 weeks we're doing 2 shows both weeks. So we've got another show tomorrow night. We're going to be talking to Cameron Mole. So definitely go to the website designchat.info and check out the guests to read up more about them. But tonight we're going to keep focused because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. And one of the first things we'll go ahead and look at here behind me, it's kind of, see, this is why we do this, because in the back, it's going to be hard for everybody to see on my screen, but you guys can download the PDF or go to the website, projectHdesign.org, and that's where Project H lives, and you can read about all of their different projects and wonderful things that they do, people who are in need of design. And this will start to give you some of the impact of what Emily's been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. I mean, it was founded in 2008. You already told us, right? 2008?
Right, we're coming up on our 2-year birthday. Yep.
It's hard to believe, looking at the amount of content that you've already built up and the reach that you've already had, worldwide reach. We're talking about people here, in not only with your core group, but now there's extension groups in other cities. There's groups that are gaining traction on their own, and the word is being spread of what can be done for design, and I just think that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it's actually the speed at which it's grown is kind of a blessing and a curse for us. I mean, it's amazing that we have been able to do so much, and I think it's a testament to this community of designers that just wants an outlet to do design that matters. At the same time, though, we're really, and I can talk about this in more detail later, but you know, specifically with design for social impact, where so much of it is new to all of us, half the time we're sort of figuring it out as we go. It's really important for us to manage that growth in a way where we're able to establish best practices and not just sort of work really wide, but to go really deep on some of the issues and figure out the...
So the first project I want you to touch on is one that you talked about, CUSP, and I'll just let you go ahead and run away with it because it's really a moving story.
Yeah, so this is the image that you see here. This is a device called the Hippo Roller, which it's funny talking about this because it feels like this project happened so long ago, and it was actually just about a year ago. But it's been something of an adventure. So this device is called the Hippo Roller. It's been around for 15 years. It was actually designed originally by two different South African designers. So this is like 15 years ago. It's been around since then, and the design has not been improved upon or even revisited since then. And what the thing does, it's a water transport barrel. So it holds about 20 to 22 gallons. I'm going to mess up my conversion, but I want to say it's 22 gallons of water, and it rolls. You know, it's a very sort of simple wheelbarrow type apparatus, which is a great alternative to the way that most women and children carry water in the developing world, which is either on their heads or in jerry cans or with buckets, which, you know, at most you can carry 5 gallons at a time. And the women that carry water on their head, it's actually very unsafe. It does a lot of cranial and spinal damage in the long run. So this is a much safer and more efficient alternative. Where Project H came in here is we didn't design the original. What we did is we recognized that this was a really amazing device, that it had the potential for really wide-scale impact. But because of its sort of engineering flaws and because, you know, things like the screw cap is not watertight. So you load it up and you roll it home and you end up with like 2/3 of the water that you started with. It's also really, really expensive to produce and ship because it's a giant ping pong ball. And when you're calculating cargo shipment costs, the things that are the most expensive are like the big lightweight, basically the big ping pong ball. So this is an incredibly inefficient thing to ship. There's also only one manufacturer in South Africa, so the distribution radius is very small. So we worked with Engineers Without Borders and with the Hippo Roller Company, which is based in South Africa, to revisit some of those issues. So how can we make this thing cheaper? How can we make this thing work better? How can we increase the manufacturing radius through things like distributed manufacturing? How can we streamline some of the manufacturing processes so that their quality control is better? When I went to visit the manufacturing facility, they had to make 150-something hippo rollers in order to get 75 that were good enough to take out into the field. Huge loss of overhead costs, waste of material. It's a high-density polyethylene. So we worked with them to re-engineer the object itself to address basically all these issues at once. So what we did, I don't know if you have an image of this, of the new version of it with the slit top.
I'll just keep on scrolling through these behind me, and everybody who just showed up, we're going to put that link in there. The same PDF that I'm showing behind me right now, you guys can download and look at the same time, because sometimes it's hard to see it. So we'll go ahead and put, it'll be in the chat room in just 1 second here. Are those the new ones there?
No, those are, there's an image. If you don't have it, it's okay. I'll just
I've got the one shot
it.
in white. Is that?
Oh, go back one. No, sorry, go forward. Okay, well, I'll just describe it. So,
okay.
The re-engineered, the Hippo 2.0, as we call it, is that's the image I was looking for. So this is a very, the form is actually pretty similar to the original. One thing we found in going into the households that had hippo rollers was that the object had become really iconic in the communities that had it. So the households that did have it were, there was sort of a jealousy thing. It was like, oh, that household has a hippo roller and we don't. It became kind of a status symbol. And so we didn't want to stray too far from the original sort of iconic nature of this object, and yet we did need to address some of these very, very important issues. So the image that you're seeing here, this is the redesigned version where we basically just separated it into two pieces. So that top piece on the right, they're manufactured in the same mold. The two pieces come apart, and then that top piece that you see on the right flips upside down and nests inside the bottom piece, and they stack together so that you can ship them over twice as efficiently. So in a traditional shipping container, the old version, you could ship 36 in one layer. 4 by 9 would fit in a shipping container, and the new re-engineered version you can ship 75, so 5 by 15 if my math is correct. So in doing that, we were able to fix a lot of things. We fixed a lot of the sort of engineering and mechanical issues. We are able to ship much more efficiently, thereby lowering the price point, and it's also much easier to manufacture in terms of quality control because those two pieces are actually simpler, and that gasket seal for the manufacturer, because they're two separate pieces, if they make two and one cap or one top part doesn't work, they don't have to throw out the entire thing. So it actually helps with some of their quality control as well.
So when you were contacted about this, had you had any previous experience with anything like this at all? Had this been a problem that maybe you have thought about in the past, or even sometimes working with a new material is going to be difficult. Had you worked with any type, designed anything that was, sort of produced in this way?
No. Well, yes and no. I mean, personally, I had a little bit of experience with rotational molding and injection molding and certain plastics, but a lot of this was brand new. And I think one of the advantages to the way that we work is we're able to sort of pool expertise as we need it. So the first thing we did was, we partnered with Engineers Without Borders, recognizing that as industrial designers we can do a lot, but there was a lot of really, really nitty-gritty things like gasket engineering and really sort of complex mechanical engineering tasks that we knew we just weren't going to be able to do as well as they should be done. So that was, the partnership with Engineers Without Borders helped a lot with that. But we also had a very sort of evolving team throughout the entire project. So as we discovered, okay, we really need someone who knows plastics, had this sort of very robust community where we could put out a call and get the expertise we needed in a pretty short time frame. So that was, it was great that it was kind of, we had a core team, but we also knew that we had a lot of sort of peripheral expertise when and where we needed it.
So one of the things that I think is the most interesting point about your group is, if you go on their website, you guys can see this, is something you talk about in your process, and the 5 points of your process that make your venture successful. And those are There is no design without action. We design with and not for. We document, share, and measure. We start locally and scale globally. And we design systems, not stuff. So all great points and can be applied to many different types of design thinking, you know. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you got to that point where those were the 5 most important parts of your process?
Yeah, well, actually, there's sort of a secret sixth, which I don't include in that list, but it's also very important. I'll talk about that in a second. You know, for us, as I mentioned before, you know, we started this with almost no business plan, and really we recognized from the beginning, okay, if we don't know exactly how to do this, we sure as hell better start from a very humble place where we're asking a lot of questions and learning as we go. So, you know, to point out a couple of those 5, so the first one, there's no design without action. Actually, the hippo roller is a fantastic example of that. The other thing I would add to that phrase is that there's no design without action, but there's also no design without critical action. So that, you know, design is a verb. There's no such thing as design unless you're actually executing projects that are meaningful in my mind. But more importantly, that you're taking a critical eye. And I think that's something when it comes to design for the good, it's very easy for us to say, oh, this is a great project. These designers are looking at homelessness and just, you know, that must make it great design. When in fact, projects like the hippo roller, which are really, really addressing basic needs, like this is, in some cases, these projects are honestly life or death situations for the users and the clients. We actually have to be much more critical where the stakes are higher and to really not settle for the mediocre designs. And I think the hippo roller was a great place for us to start because it allowed us to say, this is a great thing, but it needs to be, you know, 7 times better in order for it to achieve the social impact that it wants to. So the first one is really about, you know, making sure that every project that we do is rooted in action. We are not green drinks. We will never sit around a bar and talk about sustainability. We're fully functional design teams that the teams don't exist unless there's a project, unless there's something to work on. And that action is very critical in a constructive way, that we're looking at things and making sure that they're living up to those very high standards that we have to have for this kind of work.
So the hippo roller was one of the projects that you talked about at the CUSP conference, and the next one I want to get into, bringing up right behind me, bam, which I guess is the wrong term you were telling me just briefly before we got started. This one has to do with education and building tools necessary to sort of, you know, have fun and educate at the same time. But it was what I was so impacted by was the simplicity of this idea, you know, and then it kind of strikes you that, you know, design doesn't have to be this complex solution. Sometimes the most simple solutions are going to be the best ones and the best way to serve your clients. So I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name that you told me just before here, but it's not landscape learning, which we see here on the binder.
Well, it's just learning landscape. It started off as landscape learning, and then we just, yeah. So this binder that you see is from one of our original little binder pamphlet things, and then we switched it. So the learning landscape.
Close enough.
Yep. And, you know, actually, so the first one I talked about was there's no design without action. This project is a great example of the other 4, I think. So I'll just kind of tell the story of where this came from and then maybe touch on how it really exemplifies those 4 other values maybe.
Right.
So this is also a long story. I never know how to make this one short. So last year, okay, well I'll make it medium short. So last year I was in Southwest Uganda, which is where this picture is taken. This is at a school called the Katamba AIDS Orphan School. And I was there helping a friend who was building the new facilities for this school. So on the left of this picture, you see the brick building. That's actually their new school facilities. When I was there, they were in their old facilities, which were very run down. And my friend who was the Architecture for Humanity Fellow was in the process of building this school. So I was there helping him and also teaching some of the math classes at their old school facilities. And in doing so, and I'm a big math nerd, so I was like, oh, I want to teach math. That's the coolest thing ever. And then very quickly discovered that a lot of the students really struggled with math, more so than other subjects. There was something specific about math that was more difficult, I think, both on an instruction side for the teachers and also in a classroom learning experience side. So I sort of saw an opportunity to improve the experience of learning math. And I mean, even growing up, I remember so many kids hated math, and I personally didn't know why, but it seems to be there's something about that subject that's a little bit alienating maybe. So as a designer, I saw an opportunity to improve that experience. And at the time, I wasn't really sure what that meant, whether it was a product, whether it was a new set of textbooks, or how that might play out. But that was the initial design brief. It started with that school and that problem. And then about a month or two later, I was back in the U.S. and assembled a team of designers to start looking at this issue of how design can serve math education. So the team was made up of about 6 of us. There was a very talented young designer from the Netherlands who was here in the U.S. As my intern. She was 19 years old at the time, but she was kind of a savant, and she actually mostly led this project. And then a bunch of designers from our current New York chapter who are phenomenal and have continued with sort of the ongoing development of this system. So long story short, we developed this learning landscape idea in about 3 months, and over those 3 months we worked really closely with the teachers from Katamba and also with a bunch of other educators, some school teachers all over the country, school children, other designers to help develop what the experience was. But one thing, before I talk about exactly how it works, I think one of the biggest things that we realized in this process is that some of us went into this thinking it was going to be a product, that we were going to design like a cool Montessori-style toy or tool that the kids could play with in a classroom setting. Like, I think that was kind of, being product designers, we thought this was going to be a product. And very quickly realized that the product was not the right answer, that there's an entire market out there of leapfrog-style educational toys, plastic, things that are for the most part very poorly made, things that are electronic, that have very prescribed ways of using them, where you have to read a rule book, you have to read a manual as a 6-year-old before you can use this thing, and then once you've read it, there's really only 3 ways you can use it. So we wanted to sort of turn that on its head and say, okay, instead of prescribing the way kids use things, and instead of containing it to this really sort of self-contained object, let's make this about what kids do best, which is running around like crazy, playing games, screaming, and, even though they don't know it, actually learning in a really engaging way. The way that the learning landscape works is, you've seen it in the past couple slides, it's a really, really simple spatial intervention where you find a bunch of reclaimed tires. The bigger the better. The big sort of bus and truck tires work the best. This is North Carolina, this slide here. We use some of their old school bus tires for their playground. So you take these tires, you bury them in a grid of either 4x4 or 5x5. And within the space, we developed a series of games that teach anything from 2 + 2 up to basic algebra, and those games are run by the teacher. So the teacher has this workbook, and there's all of the game rules, and some of the games are more team-based, where you have 20 kids and you split them into 2 teams. Some of them are more individual, where you have 2 kids on each tire that are competing against each other. Others are not competitive at all. But the idea here was to take something so simple, literally dirt and tires, and to turn it into that also happened to be educational. I'll just describe one game really quick that I think will make it a little clearer how this works. So the favorite game among almost all of the students and the teachers, I have this great photo of the assistant principal like mowing over the principal of this other school, and when we were doing the teachers training, they got really into it. So apparently it's not just for kids. But so the favorite game is called Match Me. And the way that Match Me works is you take the whole class, let's say there's 30 kids, The teacher splits them into 2 teams of 15. And then each team, one team stands on one side and one team stands on the other. And then the teacher uses chalk. Most of the games involve taking chalk and writing a number on each of the tires. I think you might be able to see it in some of these images. So the teacher writes numbers on each of the tires and then calls out a math problem. So would say like, 7 times 3. And then the kids, the first kids, well, the kids at the fronts of the lines of each team, so one from each team, have to figure out that that's 21 and then compete to find which tire says 21 and then to sit on it. So whichever kid figures out the answer and gets there first stays on the tire and wins that round. And then this continues until whichever team has all of their teammates on the tires at the same time.
Sorry, you just cut out. Last thing you just said.
Did that make sense?
Totally, completely.
Okay.
Yeah, and what a great way to get kids involved instead of, sitting in the classroom and putting heads down and looking at, some sort of bad copy of something that was written 20 years ago.
Yeah.
This gets their heart pumping, this gives the competitive nature up, and is a simple way to sort of get outside and do another important thing right now, which is exercise, which a lot of kids, at least in the U.S., I know it's probably not the problem in some of the places that you visited, need to get outside. So there are benefits for all different types of groups of people that I think, this is going to be sort of a long-lasting thing and help a lot of kids.
Yeah, and this gets back just really quickly to one of the 5 values that you listed, is that aside from I think the second one is we design with, not for, which just means, we're not designing for clients. We're designing with our partners. And what that means is, we didn't do this locked in a room all by ourselves. We, user tested the heck out of this thing. And from the very beginning, we had teachers and students and educators. And my mom has been in education for 30 years, and she was part of the design team. So we really tried to make this about the students, about the users, and to not view this as like the designers over here and the clients over here. But I mean, the other one I want to mention is that we design systems and not stuff, and I think this is a perfect example of that, where, yeah, we're product designers, and at the beginning we did think this could be a great product. Montessori toys are amazing, and we could have taken that sort of approach where it was this very beautifully crafted thing, but something like this, which is, it's both a spatial system, it actually is a product if you think about sort of the copywritten material in this book that we developed, and then sort of building a community around, there's now 6 different schools that have this, and so how do you both document the new games that the teachers are creating themselves and share that with all the other schools? So it really does become this like living system that we are trying to keep up with, and it's exciting to see that in a way that you couldn't, I don't think you would ever see that from a static product in the same way, where this type of system, it does live on, and it's completely adaptable, and it changes. Every time I go back to visit the North Carolina school, which I've been back there like 3 or 4 times in this past year, and every time I'm there, it's being used slightly differently, and that's really exciting to see something that is continually relevant because it's able to evolve with the user.
Just plain old awesome. I mean, it's very inspiring to see this type of solution come about for such a good cause and see it live on like that. And it's got to be very sort of gratifying for you to know that you are a big part of making that happen.
Yeah, well, actually, I do. I mean, I was very lucky to be physically on the design team in this project. With some of the projects, I end up in sort of a management capacity, but this one in particular is very personal to me because I did get to be a part of the design team, and I actually have built one myself. And I just want to mention the secret 6th value of our process, which is that we build, which is kind of a simple idea, but I don't think designers do it enough. That we, half the time I'm like covered in dirt and trying to figure out the way things work, and we physically try to build these solutions. And I think with something like the learning landscape, we never would have gotten to this place if we weren't like out there with the kids, getting dirty, physically building these things ourselves, and understanding the way that things work and the way that they come together. And that's always been a really important process for us is doing the building and doing the hard work and not doing the sort of, Form Z and alias rendering and then hoping that it's good.
Right. And I think that one definitely reflects the first one that you had, there is no design without action. Something I'm really big on right now is sort of the power of now. If I have an idea, I've got to act on it now and make something happen. And I think that's a great credo for designers in general. If you have an idea, we build. We are people who are makers, and we create things. And if you just sit there thinking about it all day, nothing good is going to come of that. So you have to take action. You have to do something that you believe in. And you're definitely doing that. And one of the things that you chose to do was to write a book. You wrote a book called Design Revolution. And part of the sort of description that I gathered from your talk and also sort of researching on the internet was that you were talking about we need to go beyond going green and to enlist a new generation of design activists. We need big hearts, bigger business sense, and the bravery to take action now. Exactly what we were just talking about. So tell us a little bit about that story, how your book came about.
Well, that was sort of an act of a feat of serendipity, but I also want to just mention that quote that you just read.
Yes.
It used to be, I don't remember the last phrase, but it used to say bigger balls, and they edited that out. So just want to mention that.
Well, let's get it right.
That was the original version. Anyway, so
and that's part of it too.
Yeah. Okay, so Project H, as I said before, was founded in January 2008. The book was something that came across my plate as a potential opportunity in May. So Project H was 4 months old, and at that point, I've always wanted to write a book, but figured it was 10 years down the line. So I had just gotten back from Uganda from a trip to the Katamba AIDS Orphan School. I was giving a lecture in New York at the ICFF, at the Contemporary Furniture Fair during Design Week in May of last year. And every year Metropolis magazine sponsors a one-day conference of speakers. So they had, the theme last year was, what they call it, Make Good and Prosper. So it was all about social impact and design. They had Eve Bahar there and Cameron Sinclair, and I was a speaker. So I gave, I was totally jet lagged, and I don't think what I said made much sense, but I gave a lecture about Project H and its sort of infant stages. And after my lecture, a woman came up to me who happened to be the book editor for Metropolis Books, which is Metropolis Magazine's in-house publishing house. And she said that the material was really fresh, and that it might make for a great book. And I wanted to say, well, did you know that Project H is only 4 months old, and I'm probably not the person to do this? But I bit my tongue on that one and sent her a proposal like a week later, and signed a contract in August, and had 90 days to write this book. So
wow.
The vision behind the book was not, this is not meant to be a monograph of Project H's work, simply because we probably couldn't fill a whole book. We don't have enough work. Instead, I think it's something of a compendium of similar work that starts to tell a story about what design can do, and collectively where we're at. It's a benchmark as well to say, okay, this is 2009. These are the things that we've done. Not everything in that book is perfect. As a collection, I think it's really strong, but individually, all of them have flaws. But it's interesting to look at this collection of design for social impact and say, this is where we are, this is what we can do, this is what we know how to do, and this is where our opportunities are. So I hope that people, I also wrote like a 40-page essay about the precedent and the toolkit and the tactics for designing for social impact and doing it in the right way. So I hope that the book is, I hope that people don't view it as like the be-all, end-all. It really was, for Project H, almost an extended mission statement, and a way for us to explore the space that we had embarked upon and to start to seek out what the best practices were.
And this is all leading to another thing that you're doing, which starts in February. You have acquired an Airstream trailer, and if you don't know what that is, we're about to show you. It is this monstrosity of metal that was, I think they came about in the 50s as sort of, I'm forgetting the name of the period, but it's sort of like the like Rocket Man time, you know, where it's got these great lines, and it's just there's like there's little beads in them, you know. It just looks. It's one of those objects that you just kind of look at and you can't look away from it. If you've ever seen one of these things on the road, it's just sort of jaw-droppingly interesting. And so you found one of these, and you've decided to take this Design Revolution on the road, and it's the Design Revolution Roadshow, and you're leaving in February, and you're driving basically all over the U.S. and stopping in Chicago, where I hope we can still meet up, because I totally want to do a show from that trailer. I want to be hanging out in that trailer. That would be awesome.
April 7th, 2010.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Yeah, we'll be there for a week. So actually, the Airstream, we didn't acquire just for this project. The project manager of Project H, whose name is Matthew Miller, has owned this for 6 years. And I've actually been living in it for about 6 months.
Really?
Yeah, so this is that's Project H headquarters right there.
That's so cool.
And also my apartment. So I moved from I moved up in the world from my parents' house to the trailer. So yeah.
That's dedication. That is so awesome. You're living it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a great life. You realize you only need 2 milk crates full of possessions, and then it's hard to think about ever moving back into an apartment. Like, what would I fill it with? I don't really know.
Wow.
But okay, so the Design Revolution Roadshow is, on one hand, a book tour, but so much more. So this
Right.
came about kind of as a joke. My book editor, the same woman who came up to me after the lecture, her name is Diana Murphy, and she asked me, right before the book came out, what are you going to do for a book tour? Do you want to go to Barnes and Nobles and do all kinds of book signings, or do you want to go to public libraries or what? And I was like, that sounds awful. I don't really want to do either of those things.
Yeah.
What I really, the sense of, or the sort of sentiment of the book is that these things are accessible, that they make your life better, and it just felt like such a great extension of the book's mission to literally put these things in a mobile unit and show them to people. I mean, it was as simple as that. Like, the press photos of these objects and these products just don't do them justice. I mean, you have to see them and use them and literally be like holding them to understand just how powerful they are. So
Right.
The Airstream trailer will be this open sort of exhibition space, and also the mobile living unit. And we'll be going to, starting on February 1st, we'll be going to now 27. We just added 2 new schools, colleges and high schools. So we felt like it was really important not just to be preaching to design students who maybe already saw the importance of this, but really to be speaking to teenagers who maybe hadn't even considered design as a career or a way of thinking, because to them it means luxury. To most of us it means luxury. But to be able to make the case for design as a way to tackle some really big problems and to have a trailer full of evidence, I think is pretty powerful. So we'll do 27 schools in 75 days, 6,300 miles, 1 trailer, and the guy in that picture is Matt Miller, who's the project manager, travel buddy for the duration of the show.
And one of your design problems that you had to solve was how to fit all of this stuff into the trailer and bring it with you. And there's some photos here that I grabbed from Flickr that kind of show the process of you guys laying out all of this stuff and sort of valuing it and what shape it takes, and can it fit in a 40-foot long shape?
Oh, well, the trailer itself is actually only about it's 27 feet long.
Oh, I don't remember where I got 40 from. Sorry about that.
Well, 40 is with the truck. So we ended up with, once you put a little bit of room for a bed and like a little niche for a closet, you end up with about 18 feet from the front to the middle of usable exhibition space. So our solution was to use a bunch of milk crates and build out this kind of makeshift kit of parts style exhibition space where we're able to use the milk crates as storage while we're driving, because we can't keep these things on. So we're using the milk crates as storage, and then also as our sort of pop-up fixtures, and we'll just be showing them on top of that. Really nice white painted plywood and some great decals and some nice lighting, and paint everything white, and things tend to look a little brighter. That was the solution. Yeah.
That is so cool. And so, do you know how many cubic feet total you have in there?
Cubic feet? Oh, let's see. Including our living space?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so it's 27 feet
Do the
bulk
math
bumper.
quick. Do the math.
Oh, I have a calculator watch. Let's see. All
Oh,
right, yeah.
break it out. Is it a Casio?
It is 23 feet
Nice.
times 8 feet times. Okay, so if this thing were a perfect cube, which it is, or a
Right.
perfect rectangular shape, it would be
Right.
1,288 cubic feet, but because it's rounded, I would put it closer to 1,100.
Right. That's so cool. Living space and show space. And that's absolutely brilliant. I am so looking forward to when you guys make it to Chicago and we get to do a show with you guys, and I think it's going to be such a cool experience. And you probably can't see it on the screen here, but she's got a bumper sticker on the window here that says "Design can change the world." And I just thought this photo was so appropriate to sort of end on, in talking about this project, that it's design and it's an ambition, and it's a sticker that's on something that's designed that's just amazing, and you're taking all these valuable design objects to all these people and changing the world by showing everybody what these things can do and what designers can do and what they can do as designers and critical thinkers to solve problems and help people and make the world a better place. And that's just so inspiring to me.
Thanks. Well, yeah, actually that design can change the world phrase sort of started as our unofficial slogan, and I have to say some days I feel like it's just much too lofty of a goal, but I think it's one of those things that, eternal optimism is a good business strategy, and it's really helped us to shape the way that we work. And the world may be a relative term. Maybe it's not the whole world. Maybe it's my world or the world of the fourth graders at that school in North Carolina, but that will sort of continue to be the bar against which we hold all of our projects accountable. So.
Absolutely brilliant. So we're getting near the end of the chat where we're going to start doing some Q&A with all you folks who are still hanging out with us. A couple of notes that I need to cover on. We are doing another show tomorrow, so if you're around 8 o'clock tomorrow night, tune in, mashable.com/chat. And I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of this. I just realized my name's Ryan McGovern. On Twitter, I'm @Hoopajube and @DesignChat. I'm a designer also from outside of Chicago. Right now we're broadcasting from Samana Mason in West Dundee. Very cool folks to help us out. They're also the same people who put on the CUSP conference where I met Emily for the first time. So check them out too, samanamason.com. And also as of, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we're now available as an iTunes podcast. So you can go to iTunes and sign up and subscribe, and it just automatically download a new episode of Design Chat every week. So the whole point of this is to bring the design community together and talk about design and the ways we can help each other, and to break down the barriers that we all have, the competitive barriers and the sort of corporate barriers, and come together and talk about design in a cool environment. And Mashable, of course, thanks to them for letting us do that. So so now we're going to move on to the Q&A portion of this evening. Let me just switch windows here and kind of scroll down. We've been saving your questions. And from what I saw during the chat, it's kind of hard to do the chat and sort of watch the chat room at the same time. There is one person, Daniel Coutinho, who is very active tonight. So if anybody else, Daniel, don't get me wrong, we're going to ask a lot of your questions. But if anybody else wants to throw some questions out there right now, definitely do so. So the first one and the next three come from Daniel Coutinho. What exactly means sustainable design for you?
To me, I actually hate that word. I think it's overused and no one knows what it means.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just sort of good sense, like doing things the way they should be done if you have half a brain. And that sounds really like kind of overly simplified, but I think a lot of, in a way, we've sort of gotten ourselves to a point, both in the way that we work as consumers and also the way that we work as designers, where we need sustainability to sort of undo all of the bad decisions we've already made, and yet sustainable design is really, in my mind, what we should have been doing all along. It's just good sense. It's design and a process that is respectful, that is proactive, that is innovative, that relies on sort of natural processes and human capital to come up with great solutions. And yeah, I actually I resent the fact that that sustainability has become almost synonymous with environmentally friendly, because I think they're very different things. Sustainability is about making good choices that will not be harmful in the long run, but also that improve life on a daily basis right now. And that's not just about the environment. That's about human rights and social justice, and how do we contribute things to society that are well designed and that make life better. And I guess, yeah, I mean, I would sort of love to replace that word with something else, because I think it's just become so overused that we're not quite sure what it means yet. And I would love to even just get rid of it from our vocabulary and just start, if we all just started designing more responsibly and just with good sense, then we wouldn't ever really need to use that word in the first place.
What we're talking about, is that we see a lot of corporations take this on. They're going green. They're going to be responsible and all this, and they're pretending that they're going to be open. So there's a lot of people talking the talk and not really walking the walk or understanding what that means. What groups can you think of right now that are doing an admirable job of changing the way they do business, or other groups like yours that are doing things to create objects that are sort of environmentally responsible?
Environmentally responsible, or socially responsible, or both? I mean,
both.
I think some of the most interesting companies are, just off the top of my head, there's something in the enterprise section of the book. It's a company called Art Technica, which I'm sure many probably heard of. Art Technica is a company based out of Los Angeles. They design really beautiful things for a luxury market, which you may think would exclude them from something that I would like. However, the way that they run their business is incredibly engaged with the entire sort of life cycle of how their products come to be, and who's making them, and what that production is empowering. So what they've done, they have a program called Design with Conscience, and in that program they partner a well-known designer. They've had people like Hella Jongerius, who's an amazing Dutch designer. They'll partner a very well-known designer with a craft community. So in Hella Jongerius' case, it was a community in Peru that was they were masterful ceramicists. And so they partnered the two together, and then collectively they came up with this beautiful line of bowls and accessories, which in doing so, they're able to use Hella Jongerius' design expertise to enhance a craft community and to bring more income, new production methods to a craft community that needed a little bit of economic support. So I think things like that that are finding new ways on sort of the production side of things to think about design for social impact. Not everyone needs to work like Project H, where you're designing water transport barrels and playgrounds for education. There are still ways to do the same old things in much more sort of socially engaged ways.
Next question comes from WonderSpark. Hope to have a Project H chapter in Vancouver one day soon. Need some Canadian representation. So what's the best way that someone can get involved and help out, or maybe even start a chapter?
Well, okay, so a couple of things. I mean, I get asked this question all the time, and I should preface, well, I'll start with the bad news, and then I'll give you the good news. So the bad news is that our chapters, I think chapter is almost a misnomer, because our chapters work their butts off, and they really, I think they go beyond the traditional definition of chapter, in that our chapter heads are incredibly dedicated. They're all volunteers, every single one of them, and some of the chapter members work 10 to 15 hours a week design project. So it takes a lot of commitment, and we don't just start chapters because we feel like we should. We're very sort of discerning in where we start them, and we want to make sure that the there. And actually, we're even sort of ratcheting back on our chapters so that we can really invest in the projects that we've already built. That being said, we are actually moving towards a model where we're going to be able to support more projects in more geographic locations, not through a chapter structure, but just by supporting individuals who want to engage locally and maybe have an idea for, oh, there's a homeless shelter down the street and I volunteer there and I saw this opportunity to do whatever. We can sort of, on two levels, coach them through a process that will help lead to better design and hook them up with resources and advertising and some people. And then also connect them to some of our other Project H designers who have gone through the. Really, for us, it is about the process. So I think in this new model, we'll be able to support more individual designers who just need a little building a great project.
Next question comes from Exanity. During the design phase for the projects that Project H works on, are any digital programs used on the visual designs? Programs like Maya, Rhino, and AutoCAD. Is the entire process physical and hands-on?
We almost never use programs like that. There have been a couple cases where, okay, for example, with the learning landscape, so simple. I mean, we didn't need to use AutoCAD, and we, could have done the entire thing without it. However, we're getting to a point now where we want to be able to open source those construction documents. So if a school emails us and says we want to build one, instead of us spending $1,000 to fly out there, stay for 4 nights and build it, we're hoping to just sort of open source the process and provide those construction documents basically for free. So in that case, yes, we would be using AutoCAD. Really, I guess my point is, yes, we would use those programs, but really only after the fact as a way to enhance what we. Most of our process is very kind of hands-on, in the field. We don't have any offices. The chapters don't have offices. I have a trailer as an office. So really the work does have to happen, out in the field in a very, very hands-on way. So I actually tend to be a little bit allergic to technology when it comes to the design process, because I think that the best solutions come out of that very direct engagement with materials.
Totally agreed, because sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you start, at least I do anyway, having more experience in graphic design and sort of digital design, that sort of thing. When you're working with those tools, sometimes when you start learning those tools very well, it starts limiting your thinking on how you can even approach a project anymore. And there are times when you need to get away from these digital tools to just think clearly about the problem that you're dealing with, and then execute however you need to execute and with whatever tools. These softwares, these programs, Maya, the 3D programs and architectural CAD programs and Adobe software, these designers need to realize that these are tools, and these are only small parts of the process that help us accomplish our goal. And once your design starts becoming a direct reflection of the tool you're using, you need to start rethinking how you're approaching these problems, in my opinion anyway. And that's something I've had to deal with at great length. So we've got one more question, and that was from our very adventurous Daniel Catino. Do you happen to think about function and social impact first and then make the idea visually beautiful?
I actually don't think it's sort of a this, then that scenario. I mean, I don't know that I think about either of those things separately. To me, something like the learning landscape, and obviously aesthetics and beauty are incredibly subjective. So for me, something like the learning landscape, that's not shiny. It's not like swoopy and colorful and beautiful maybe in a Western sense, but I think because it's so simple and because it's so functional, it becomes something beautiful. And I mean, the other thing I would say about the role of aesthetics in all of this is that I've been asked a couple times, like, how come your designs don't look like design? I actually think something like the One Laptop per Child, for example, which is a really beautiful, I mean, it's a phenomenally designed object, beautiful detailing and really interesting sort of materials and form factors. And yet, you know, if you take a laptop like that to rural Uganda at the Katamba AIDS Orphan School, they're likely to say, you know, not only, okay, what the heck is that thing? I've never seen anything like it, but that's way too pretty. It would get stolen.
Right.
So in some scenarios, aesthetics actually work against you. And I think the danger in getting caught up on aesthetics is that it's a bad place to start. It's a great thing to sort of consider and to let the function dictate. But I think too often, and this goes back to the issue of using all of those fancy programs, that with those programs you often do start with the form. And I think for our work it really comes out of, every single decision that we make comes out of feedback that we get from the user. So with the learning landscape, maybe you don't think it's all that gorgeous, but if a school can do it for no money because they have leftover school bus tires, I think that's a pretty beautiful thing. So I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but you know, I would love for everything to be beautiful, but more importantly, I would love for everything to be appropriate and to work for you.
Totally. So yeah, one of the things that you mentioned there that somebody asked you, you know, why doesn't it look like design? And you know, it's all sort of in the eye of the beholder. You know, beauty. It's what is design to them. You know, and other people who, you know, might know a little bit more about the subject would see that it's beautiful because of the simplicity of the solution for that, you know, for that specific problem. And you know, you can't make everybody happy all the time. You know, you can just, you know, you're kind of doing, you know, your specific thing about solving these problems for these people who need it, and coming up with just brilliant solutions. So I just want to congratulate you in the crazy amount of success you've had in such a short time with Project H. And thank you for coming on and talking to the design community tonight. It's very special that you took the time to do that, and it was great to spend some time with you.
No, thank you. This was great. Thanks for having me on. And I look forward to seeing you on April 7th again.
Yes, April 7th. It's going to be so cool. We got to figure out how in the world. I know you're going to be at an art school. We got to tap into some sort of internet resource so we can broadcast from there. But we'll work out the details later.
Yeah.
Before you guys with that. I'm just very excited. Sorry, I'm very excited about doing that. So thank you everybody for coming. Tune in tomorrow night. We're going to do another design chat because of the holidays that won't be released until 2 weeks from now. So until then, check us out on Twitter. We're at DesignChat, and Emily is at Project H Design.
Yep, and the Roadshow is, if you want to follow the Roadshow,
yeah,
it's at DesRev Roadshow. I'll type it in the little thing, and I'll put the website too. And
as long as we're all sharing, anybody who's in the chat room, put your Twitter follower name on there, and we'll all follow you. This is about design community. We're all here together and working in the same experience. So share your website, share your Twitter name, and everybody follow everybody. I want to see 100 tweets come out right now. Look at them go. Cool. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you soon.